Guys, so continuing on, this is the next day. What I had to do was right after I showed you guys the nightmare, because this pump wasn't matching this pump. This is the original pump to the car. Well, I went down to O'Reilly's. So I actually went to different auto parts, and O'Reilly's was the best bet, and it was going to be the next day. And it's the same one. This is the one from O'Reilly's. You guys can see, same thing. Connectors are the same, and this ran like 424. I believe that's what it ran. Here's the part number. So this is the wrong part number for this car. Don't get this. Make sure you pick up this. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and start installing this. So I left everything unplugged. I didn't plug nothing back in. I was able to move the car just with the 12-volt battery. I was able to put it in neutral and move the car. I'm gonna go ahead and get started installing this. All right. So I guess you have to slide, bring the bracket in at an angle like this, and then try to tilt it this way, and then push it in underneath this box here for the ABS system. Hopefully it's not too much of a pain, because to get it out was a pain. Okay, I guess that's not working out. I'll try this way. So now I'm gonna flip it this way. They keep falling. So the pump's sitting there. Now I just got to line up the holes for the bolts, the two bolts that hold it in place. And remember, there's one over here on this side, and then the one back there. I'm gonna put those in place. All right, guys. So I had to take off that 10. Don't put the bolts back on. You need that free play on the pump, because this hose is still a pain. So take your time. It's gonna go on, but it's gonna give you some trouble. And just try to move the pump back, slide the hose as much as you can, and then just keep working until you get to the top piece there, and then put on this other hose, and then you'll be able to bolt it on, just to give you guys more space, because this is still a pain. I mean, you don't have no room, See that? Alright guys, so I'm having trouble when I put this 10 down there. It doesn't sit right, it falls off of the socket. I don't have a magnetic socket, so I'm going to use a piece of paper on the back of the bolt there. Set it in here so it doesn't fall off. So I'm trying to put this in between that one hose on the left, and every time you put the socket through there with the bolt, it loosens it and it falls off. Extension, I'll show you guys. Right, so this one's going to this one right here. that? Let me light it up for you guys. So the bolt's in there, and then that back one, I had to do the same thing with this back one. So I put a piece of paper, the paper that came with my magnet tool here. So there's one there and one here. I need to get a magnetic sockets or something so I'm not dropping bolts when I'm trying to install. So again guys, this is still a pain installing this pump. Removing and installing is a pain, so just be aware. I'm just going to remove these papers here. There's one. I'll get the bone in the back. That's two. Alright guys, so I took off the hose clamp on this side, no leaking, and I took off this hose clamp and there's no leaking. So there's an indentation on the bottom side of the pump for this hose. In the bottom it's already hitting, but the one on the top it's not. So I believe that's good where it's at. Just keep double checking. I plugged in the harness in the back. The harness is plugged in back there. So now it's just plug in everything else. Connect these other two harnesses, and this one's got a clip for the clamp down here on the bracket of the water pump. So that's where this one sits. So I'm gonna connect this black one over to the left side. Hear that click. And then this one connects here. Hear that click. And this one connects right here. There we go. This one needs a little bit more force, so you might want to use both hands. Grab the both sides of the harness and then push, real hard. You'll hear the snap, and then always pull away from it to make sure it doesn't come off. All the connectors, nothing. And then remember to put this guy back on the bracket. So that's there. And now we move on to opening up the inverter so I can put this guy back on in here. I'm gonna lift the cover now. Remember guys, to be careful that nothing goes in there. And you have this connector here. I believe this might be a ground connector. I was using some zip ties to keep this away from down there. So just remember, it goes in like this. There's a gasket around this hose. Around the connector here. See it? There's a rubber gasket to keep watertight. You have your 210s. And be careful for no moisture or water, anything dropping inside this inverter, including sweat. I sweat a lot, so I'm just trying to be careful, stand away from the inverter while this is exposed. If something goes wrong with this, you're pretty much done. You would have to go find another inverter to continue. So I don't know the torque specs on this. I'm just doing it hand tight, you know, get that tightness on there, that feel. You don't over tighten those. Then you have these three. They go here on the connector. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do this one first and this one, and then the middle one last. Same thing. So I'll do this top one first. One turn, other one. There we go. And we're good. Take this off. So now I'm gonna set this cover back on. There's a like some kind of bolt that sticks out right here. You gotta make sure that that sits right there. I'll show you guys. So see that right there? That'll sit right here. So you got a bolt here, and then that sits there. And now before I tighten any of this up, I'm gonna connect these connectors. I believe this is power from the battery, the hybrid battery. Same thing, push them in until you hear the click. There you go. Pull away, make sure they don't come out. Everything's secure. So this process right here is done, guys. Now it's just bolting all of this down, and also bolting down the inverter reservoir. All the bolts are back on the inverter cover. I hand tightened all of them all the way around, and now what I'm going to do is go in a crisscross pattern, tying this one, that one on top, then this one, that one, and this one, and that one, and this one, then that one, and just go around like that. So do one turn there, one turn here. go all the way around on all of them. And that's it, guys. Now it's just this specialty one right there. That's it. So all of this is back. Now I just got, this is the harness that goes to the motor for the wipers. It plugs in up here. And then this is your relay box. So this will go up here. And before I move on, remember, if you do loosen this, remember to still tighten this back up. So I need to put those bronze colored bolts on it. Well, this one, when you put it back on, if you don't have a correct tool, this is what you got to deal with. So I have one finger on top, one underneath, and I'm spinning it so I can tighten up this bolt down here. And there it is. And now I can get my wrench and tighten up this 10. So if you run into this problem, one finger underneath, one on the side up here, and just spin with this finger, go down, while you hold the bolt from the bottom. So the bolt will rest on the top of your finger and you spin it. The inverter reservoir is tight, everything's in place except for the cowl bracket thing that goes down here on top of there for the wipers. And all I'm doing now is just topping off some fluid because I did spill a little bit. So remember, Toyota Lexus Scion antifreeze. So once I top that off, then I'll be firing up the car. I still gotta go connect the battery. So now I'll plug in all of this, plug in the hybrid battery. Alright, so make sure everything's connected. Plug back in. Connector's back on. Now we just gotta fire up the car. Alright guys, car's on. I hope the video will help you guys, whoever has a second generation Prius and is trying to change that pain of a pump, the auxiliary pump that's back here. I hope that you guys can get that done and save you guys some money and labor. That's it. So I put this assembly back on, put the motor for the wipers back on. Now I'm gonna get ready to put this on right here. So remember, I left the bolts on there so I wouldn't lose them. Same thing with these guys, I left them on here. Alright guys, the final piece is on, wiper assembly's on. Everything's officially back on the car.